whole process in landing a job starts with landing an interview. The first and the foremost thing that happens in any job application process and hiring process is landing an interview. And this course is going to help us understand what's the best, the most effective way to landing interviews and how we are going to approach it. Now, everything starts with your presence, and your presence is the most important in this entire process. And it consists of two key parts and one optional. So first it starts with your CV, how your CV presents you, then your LinkedIn profile, and optionally your GitHub. So we are going to be going through all of these a little bit later. But these three aspects are something that you have to focus on first. Now, why this is important? On one side, we can have a 10 out of 10 engineer with 5 out of 10 presence. On the other hand, we can have mediocre engineer with 10 out of 10 presence. What do you think? Who's gonna be invited to the interview? Of course, the one with better presence, no matter how good the other one is. Now, in order to make our presence stand out, there are three core concepts that we have to take care of. First, we have to deliver who we are. So, whatever we are having, like CV, LinkedIn, GitHub profile, it has to deliver effectively who we are. What do we stand for, right? That's the first. Second thing is over time improvement. We have to deliver, we have to show that over time we are striving for improvements, that we are actually increasing our knowledge and our skills. That's what everybody wants. And then the third thing is we have to make sure that our presence delivers what the employers want. We have to deliver what they want to see, right? So those are the three core principles that we have to take care of when it comes to building our presence. Now, let's take a look what we are going to be covering in this first week of this course and how we are going to approach it. So first, we are going to take a look in a resume or CV, and we are going to be talking about its anatomy and its purpose. So what makes a standing out CV, and what is the purpose of the CV itself? Why do we need to send CV? What's the data that we have to include inside, right? Next up, we are going to actually craft a standing out CV. We're going to take some templates and blueprints that I have in hand, and then we are going to craft a spotless CV step by step so that you know how to do that on your own. Next up, we're going to make sure our LinkedIn is optimized well when it comes to LinkedIn SEO, which is search engine optimization. LinkedIn plays key role when it comes to landing interview, right? We want to make sure our LinkedIn is optimized so well that it stands out in front of other candidates. Next up, we're going to take a look into GitHub. So GitHub, as I said, is an optional thing, but very important. If we have a standing out GitHub, that's really deal breaker. Then we're gonna take a look, how do we market ourselves when we don't have much experience? I know that many people don't have the experience that employers want. When they make a job offer, they say like, we need minimum 5 years of experience or so. Now, how do we actually market ourselves when you don't have the experience that we believe we need to have, right? We are gonna be taking a look into that. Ultimately, we are going to take a look at some common mistakes that people make, and we will make sure that we won't do them. Now, that's going to be everything that we are going to be covering in this week. And this is the most important week of the entire course. Let's dive in and let's do the work. Welcome to the second video of this week, which is CV anatomy and purpose. By the end of this video, we are going to have much better understanding of the topic, and then we are going to apply this knowledge in the next video, which comes after this, where we are going to be crafting a CV hands-on. So let's dive in. Here is what we are going to cover in this video, right? Why is your CV crucial? What's the importance of the CV? What purpose does it serve? Next, we are going to take a look at the anatomy of a strong CV. What makes a CV strong? How do we structure the CV to make it nice and impactful? We are going to take a look into the perspective of the recruiter. We want to understand the recruiter's perspective as much as possible so that the CV that we are going to craft makes a difference at the recruiter's hand. We're going to take a look at the common pitfalls that people do when writing their CVs. Finally, as a summary, we are going to take a look at some key takeaways related to the topic. Now, before we get started, a little warning, this is the most important video so far inside the course. So watch the entire video, don't skip, don't fast forward. And as a pro tip, if you want to save a little bit of time, you can watch it with double the speed. Now let's go. Why is your CV crucial, right? The first thing that a CV serves is it brings attention to us. It's just a file, and we use this file to draw attention to us. We use the CV as a starting point to engage with potential job offer or potential recruiter. So we have to think about our CV always from that perspective. Next up, the CV creates a picture on the other side of ourselves. We have to think about it as a snapshot of our suitability for potential job offer or particular job posting. The only purpose of our CV is to get us to an interview. So we have to think about the CV as an entry ticket to a party, and the party being the interview. So the only job that the CV has to do is pass this entrance. Is it an HR? Is it a hiring manager? That will bring us to the technical interview. So that's why the CV is important. That's why putting information inside and structuring it properly is essential, is key, so that it resonates well with the job posting, with where we are going to be applying, so that we get potential positive feedback. As a matter of fact, an HR spends about 10 seconds when they're skimming through a CV. So that's why the structure and the data inside matters a lot, right? That's why we don't want to make the CV too long or put irrelevant stuff inside, as we're going to take a look later in more details, right? So the structure matters a lot, which brings us to the anatomy of a good CV. What's important from this perspective is the length of the CV. So we aim to a maximum 2 pages. So it should be 2 pages or shorter, right? So that's what standing out CV looks like in terms of length. And then another perspective when it comes to the anatomy or to the structure of the CV is the essential sections. So what are the sections that we want to include inside? So let's take a look at those. First, we need to put a header, and we have to think about this header as a top banner on our CV where we are going to outline our name, our contact information, and the area of impact or the area of focus, what we do in general. Then we need a little summary, like up to 2-3 sentences, where we are going to outline our goals, our motivations, what makes us a good match for the position where we're applying. Then comes the experience, which is the most important part of the CV. Inside this section, we put reverse chronological order of the things that we were doing, perhaps positions that we worked at. And what's important to put here is achievements, responsibilities, or both. 2-3 sentences of the impact that we've made at particular position. As we're gonna see later, one of the mistakes that people make when it comes to this is they include nitty-gritty implementation details here. That's not needed. So all we need to do here is put 2-3 sentences about the impact that we've made at particular position. Next comes the links section. Now inside the links, we want to put links that are relevant to the job application that we are making. So we want to include link to our LinkedIn profile, which is our professional outlook. Then it is recommended to put a link to our GitHub, which serves as a portfolio potentially. Now we don't need to have complete projects or projects that are already working or fully done. What's most important and what matters is the approach that we are taking, what are the things that we are currently learning. That's what our GitHub outlines, and that's important for the role. Then we can include links to open source contributions, links to social media that are relevant for the job position. For example, if you have a YouTube where you are sharing content relevant to the job position, then it makes sense to include that link. But if your YouTube contains content that is completely irrelevant, maybe about your hobbies or something, then it doesn't make much sense to include it, right? And finally comes the education section, where we want to include degrees that we have achieved throughout our career. Now, here is a visual representation of how the CV might look like. So at the top, we have a header, followed by the summary, then the experience, then links, and finally the education. Now, these are the essential sections that you want to have in your CV. Of course, you can have additional ones if you want, like for example, languages, and those are optional, right? So you can include those if you have space and if you really want to. Now, what if, for example, the experience is a little bit bigger? Then everything else shifts in the second page. Now, the experience expands in the first page, and then even in the second one, and then in the second, we are gonna put the links and the education. And as mentioned before, we can add additional sections at the end if you really want to. Now, probably you are gonna say, yeah, but what about the skills, right? Where do I put the skills? Now, this might be a little bit counterintuitive, but the skills section is overestimated. Traditionally, we were taught to put skills and stuff in our CV, but most of the time they don't serve the purpose that we believe they do. So most of the time we are going to have a mismatch between what the job offer asks for and what we have in the skills. Oftentimes we have duplicates, oftentimes we have things that are completely irrelevant for the job position that we are making, so it just pollutes the things inside the CV and they don't bring value. On top of that, there might be things that are completely useless in today's technology, right? And things that are maybe deprecated. So like it just pollutes the whole CV, it doesn't add much value. Finally, this section is sort of duplication. For example, when you have a broken car, you go to a mechanic. When you have a broken teeth, you go to a dentist. You are not applying to a job that is completely irrelevant. You are not an Android programmer that applies to a nuclear reactor worker. In that sense, having the skills section in your CV is duplication, it's not required. Alright, understanding the recruiter's perspective, or with other words, what the recruiters are looking for when they are taking consideration a CV. The first thing they are looking for is relevance, whether our experience and expertise matches the job description. Next comes the clarity. They are looking for a clean, nicely done structure that you can quickly skim through without a lot of fluff or irrelevant details. That's why we want to keep the things in our CV nice, clean, and concise. Finally, they're looking for an impact. They want to see what were the responsibilities and the accomplishments that we've made. They're not looking for a list of duties. So to sum that up, we want to make sure that our CV emphasizes that we are a match for the job posting. Common pitfalls to avoid. The first thing that people make as a mistake is overloading the CV with irrelevant details. For example, non-tech related roles or things that do not align with the job post and job offer. Now, that's why it is important to tune your CV before every job application to make sure that we don't include things that are completely irrelevant for the job posting, right? Another mistake that people make is poor formatting. We want to make sure our CV is easy to read and scan through. If the CV is hard to read through, most probably it's going to be thrown away. So avoid adding tables, avoid adding columns, like make it clean and nice in one single column. Additionally, avoid distractions. For example, if you're having some specific colors, avoid those. Just make it black and white, clear font, easy to read and scan through. And as a tip, if you want to draw attention to something, you can make it bold. That's it. Lastly, I like to pay attention to spelling or grammar errors and unprofessional data. Make sure you don't have typos and grammar mistakes in your CV, and also avoid information like gamerxyz@gmail.com or something like that. So try to put relevant and professional information in your CV. Now, let's finish up with some key takeaways from this video, right? First thing is simplicity and relevance. The structure of the CV matters as much as the data inside it. We want to make sure it is easy to read and scan through our CV. That's the key point. We have to understand that our CV is a marketing document. I want you to understand that your CV is your entry ticket to the technical interview, nothing more than that. And in that sense, it is a marketing document. And now that we have all this understanding from what is relevant, what is important when it comes to a CV, let's put all this knowledge into perspective and craft a spotless CV hands-on in the next video. Welcome to the third video of the first week, the Spotless Resume Blueprint. In this video, we won't go over any presentations, but we are going to be crafting a CV hands-on. Now, there could be two situations where you already have an existing CV or you have no CV at all. Now, the chances are you already have a CV, but regardless, we're going to start crafting a CV from scratch. So if you already have an existing CV, it will be easier for you to migrate what you already have in the existing one into the new one. Or if you don't have one, no problem, we are going to craft it anyway from scratch. Now, another thing I would like to mention is there are different variations of the CV. One would be a generic version of the CV that would be applicable for the general market fit. And then we are going to be actually tuning the CV according to any job application later on. So we would have a generic CV that matches the overall market. And then we are going to have copies of this generic CV that are going to be tailored specifically for specific job post or job offering. Now, without further ado, let's go back to the computer. And the first thing we need to do is, if we go to the classroom and open the job profile optimization course, in the third video, which is the one that you are currently seeing, as you're gonna see here, we have two proven CV template resources, which is the same resource, but in a different software. The first one is inside Google Doc, the other one is in Canva. Both serve the same purpose, so you can use whatever you prefer. The last resource that is listed here is my own CV, which is a generic version of my CV. And then you can use this one as a comparison to see what you ended up with versus what I have, so you can see whether it makes sense or not. Now, this CV that I have shared here, on average, passes 75% of the ATS systems, and we are gonna take a look in those just in a while. What I'm just saying here is that this CV is proven that it works. So if we end up with a CV that is similar to this one, we've done a good job. And then we can also check whatever we have against these ATS systems later on. ATS system being application tracking system that the recruiters use when it comes to job applications, but we are going to take a look into that a little bit later. Now, the first thing that we need to do is make a copy of this template. So regardless whether you use Google Doc or Canva, the process is the same. So now let's go with Google Docs. If you just open this link in a new tab, you will find this template. What you can do on your side is go to File and make a copy. And then when you make a copy, it's gonna ask you, how do you want to name it? Maybe you can just name it something like your name and last name, CV, and then make a copy of it. Now, of course, we can rename it later, but this is just to prevent possible forgotten renaming and then end up applying with unprofessional CV. So these things are very small but very important so that you don't have typos with a name, with a format, or anything else, right? We are gonna go ahead and fill out this template, and while filling it out, we are gonna keep in mind what we have learned in the previous video and apply those learnings here as well. Now let's pretend that we are crafting a new CV, so I'm gonna fill out this form and see how it ends up. As we learned in the previous video, the first section here is the header, which outlines who we are and how people can reach out to us. It's important to have good information here, and so let's start with name and last name. Now, as we've already learned, having professional information here is very important. So instead of having something like dragonballcollector@gmail.com, we want to put a professional email that people can reach out to us. If you have an email that sounds like joke, chances are they're going to throw it away. So make sure you're having a nice professional email here, maybe even the personal email, which is highly recommended. Probably name, last name @gmail.com or whatever professional email you have. Then you want to put your phone number in case they want to reach out to you by phone, if there is any screening involved or something like that. Now, of course, this one here is not my personal number. It is fake, but I'm not going to put my number. You got the idea. You're going to put your number here. On the right-hand side, we want to include the area of focus that we are doing. As we learned previously, we are not going to be including skills in the CV because the skills belong to our LinkedIn. And we are going to take a look in depth what to do and how to handle the skills in the next video where we are going to be working specifically for LinkedIn. For now, here we just put the area of focus. So for me, for example, I'm an Android developer, Kotlin and Java. Java is actually outdated, so maybe instead of Java, I can put something that is more trendy as a technology that is arising in Android. For example, it can be Kotlin multi-platform, or it could be Jetpack Compose, something like that. So, and if you want, you can also add one more. For example, Kotlin multi-platform. Keep 3 to 4 at most, and that's gonna be our header. So that's the header section. Now, summary. For the summary, we are gonna come back a little bit later, but the summary is something that we are gonna craft based on a market. So what the current market wants and needs. And we are gonna see just in a bit how to create a nice and attractive summary. Next comes the experience. Now, the experience is something that if you already had an old CV, you'll have to convert whatever your experience was into here. What's key here is to have the job title at which company. This job title and company and anything else here is in italic. So all these texts that are with italic, they should be changed. So if I'm about to fill out this, for example, I would put what's my current role. I'll change this from italic to standard. And I would say something like Senior Software Engineer Android. That's my current title at the company where I'm working. Then I'm gonna put the name of the company itself. And of course, I'm gonna change this from italic back to standard because I've already updated. Then I should put the time span. What's important here is to have a reverse chronological order. So here I would put that this is my current, then what was the previous, then the previous, and so on and so forth. So from the current towards the history, right? So here I would put something like May 2024 until current. And now here, again, change this from italic to standard. And here I have to put up to 3 sentences to describe my key responsibilities and achievements, or both, in this company, in this role. All I have to do here is focus on the accomplishments. One of the mistakes that people do is listing here bullet points with implementation details, like I've been working on 2 screens, 5 screens with Kotlin, Hilt. Those are the mistakes that people make, and we have addressed those in the previous video as well. So here what we want to do is keep this part curious. So when somebody reads it, we want to make them curious and want them to explore more. So we are going to be invited to a technical interview where they will figure out more about what we've done and how we have achieved that. Hope that makes sense. In that sense, what I would write here for my current role would be leading the development of the mobile application of the Bird CRM, something like that. Next up, I'm gonna go to the second one, which was what happened before and then before and so on and so forth. And I would expand this experience with relevant roles that I used to have throughout my career for the job application that I'm applying to. And we are gonna take a look in my own CV and get through this so that we can make a comparison and I wouldn't have to fill out all of these experiences. But you get the idea how to fill out the experience and what's important. So keep it short, keep it curious, don't put implementation details in there. Yes, that's about it. All right. Next section is the links. What's important for the links is that we want to include links that are in line with the job application where we are applying. So our LinkedIn profile comes first because it is a social network for professionals. And in that sense, it shows who we are as a professional. And that's why LinkedIn is very important. And we have dedicated video just after this one where we are going to be crafting Spotless LinkedIn, right? We are going to optimize it well. Next comes the GitHub, and the GitHub can serve as our portfolio. If you're having projects there or contributions to open source, it's gonna add a lot of value in our job application, especially if we have projects that are in line with what the job post or the job offer is, right? Of course, you may not have a GitHub, and in that case, you are gonna exclude it, but it's nice to have. It's nice to also have projects in there that are gonna showcase what you are learning or what's your approach to writing software and so on and so forth. Now, there is also dedicated video in this week where you're going to be learning how to make a spotless GitHub or a GitHub that gets you hired. And we're going to spend more time in that video about GitHub. Next comes links to social media or blogs. Now, only include those if they add value to the job offer that you are actually applying to. If you're having a social media or a YouTube, for example, where you are making content about your hobbies and they are not related to the job application, then it doesn't make much sense to include those, right? So for example, if you're making content about cars and you're applying for a job position as an Android developer, it doesn't add much value. But if you're having content in your YouTube where you're teaching Android development or things, tips and tricks about Android development, it makes a lot of sense to include it, right? So people can see also like what's your audience, what's your approach to solving problems, how you're teaching people, how you're coaching. So you could be seen as a coach that can help the team grow. So that's why it is important to have it. Now, next comes certifications, or that's what we have in this template, but it's optional thing. So if you don't have any certifications, you can of course get rid of this section altogether. But if you do, it's nice to put them so they can see that you're actually capable of accomplishing some things throughout your career. Additionally, you can add publications, for example, links to applications that you have contributed to or that you have built yourself that are already on Google Play. So they can see how the application looks like, they can try it, install it, and see how optimized it is, how much audience does it have, what's the rating. So it's nice to have 3 to 5 links if you have applications that you have contributed that are already on Google Play. And then you can add additional sections here that you are willing to. For example, you can add languages if you want, or education. The important key is here to keep this to 2 pages. As you can see here, we have 2 pages. Now, if you add a little bit more experience, this is gonna expand down. So the links might come to the 2nd page. So you can add sections, but it's not highly recommended. So it is only if it adds value to the job application that you are making, right? And adding fluff, adding irrelevant things is not gonna help you. Now, additional thing I would like to mention about this particular template is don't change the format. So keep the format as it is and only fill out the blanks where it makes sense, right? So keep the same format because this is proven format that works against ATS and works against real person HR. So it's something that is really nicely done. As you can see here, we are using bold to draw attention. We are using some gray for the things that are not very relevant. And of course, when you add a link, you are going to highlight the whole link that makes sense. And then click on this button on top to insert a link so that the link itself is going to become clickable. And when we export this into PDF, the link is going to be actually clickable and it will be easy for somebody to reach out to the link. Now, let's go ahead and write a summary that matches our professional experience and in the same time it is spotless. So let's take a look at that and finally take a look in my CV so we can make a comparison. Now, how do we write a summary that speaks out what recruiters want to see about us and who we are? Well, what we can do is scrape out what the market wants. And this is how we can do that actually. The first step is go to LinkedIn. And once we open the LinkedIn, here there is a job tab. Now, the jobs tab is listing jobs that are matching our profile. Now, if you don't have optimized LinkedIn profile, don't worry. We're going to do that in the next video. So this process might be a little bit postponed, but we're going to make sure that we are having spotless LinkedIn profile. Now here, the assumption is that you already have it, as I do. And now, as you can see here, there is listing of jobs that are matching my profile. Now, if I click here on the show all, it's going to list a bunch of other jobs or all of the jobs that are currently available on the market. The idea is that we are going to scrape throughout these job offers to see what the market wants. And based on that, we are going to craft our about. Our about has to match us, who we are, versus the market. So we are not going to make any lies or something. It's just making sure that we are matching. So the keywords and everything that is used in these job posts, we are going to actually use them to craft our about. Now, again, our about doesn't have to be too long. It could be like few sentences at most, because nobody's going to read throughout a lot. It has to be short, nice, and concise, and we're going to see how to do that actually. Now, we are not going to skip any job. So it's regardless whether you like it or not. What's important here is to go through all of those, or at least the first 10 maybe, to find what's matching, what are the common things throughout these job offers. Let's take a look here. As we can see here, it is listing about the job. It says take ownership. So here is what we will need to do as part of the team, or what's going to be our responsibility. And to make our process easier, we are going to scrape these words or keywords or whatever is required from the job market. We're going to put them into a new Google Doc, and it's going to be easier for us to see actually while crafting the about, right? So what I'm going to do here is, in a new tab, I'm going to make a new Google Doc. And here is a little tip how to do that easily. So you type doc.new, it's gonna open a new Google Doc for you. And now here you can find things like, for example, here some keywords that we may use, something like high quality standards, fast, responsive, user friendly, something like that. Next comes address app issues promptly and ensure fixes are delivered quickly. So maybe something we can use out of that. And we can keep up reading and getting things that are interesting. So for example, here we have something like clear communication, for example. That might be something very interesting. I saw also team, so teamwork maybe, something like that. It says independently and collaboratively in a fast-paced environment. So these are also things that we can take a look into. And when we sort of exhaust this one, we go to the next one. So in the next one, again, we are gonna be looking into the same thing. Here is a little tip though. When you are scraping throughout the job offers, here is something that says high skill match. Now here, as you can see, it shows what skills do you have and what skills are required that you don't have. I would recommend for every job that you are gonna open to check this, because there might be skills that are listed that you already have, but you haven't added in your profile yet. So for example, payments, I do have experience with payments in WeTransfer. It had built-in app payments as well as banking application of ABN AMRO. So I can just include the payments into those two as well. And now I'm increasing also my skills and I'm getting a better match in general. So that's a nice tip that you can do while scraping throughout, and you continue with the process. So you go down, you find out more about the job, what they need. So this job description is what matters the most. And then we find out again keywords. Here, for example, it says what you will do. It is even better, maybe description or things that we can find what they want us to do, that we can incorporate into our about. Right? An example here would be, in this agile team of 9 people, you will work together with blah, blah, blah. Now, agile is a keyword that people are using regardless whether they understand or not what agile means. It is something that we can also include in our about. Moving on, here we see maintainable and scalable architectures. So take these, maybe add them here as well. Then refactoring older parts of our application, that's something interesting, like refactoring, and so on and so forth. Now, one very interesting thing that I'm seeing here that many people are afraid of is when the job offer has something like 5+ years of experience. What if you have 3 years of experience? Should you apply here or not? Of course you will apply, and we are going to take a look into job applications later on in this course, in the second week actually. But what's important is that nobody can really judge how much experience do you have. You may have 6, 7, 8 years of experience, but is that effective experience that you're having or not? So you shouldn't be really afraid to apply if this number doesn't match to your experience. So ignore it. Do not add numbers in your CV, in your LinkedIn, in all the places where you are expressing who you are, what's your job profile, you avoid numbers. And when they are actually adding numbers, like this one here, 5+ years or whatever, just ignore it. Don't pay attention. They add this deliberately to filter out people that are afraid of these numbers, or they may see, okay, this is not a match for me. And that's the idea. So just ignore it and still apply. And as I said, we are going to take a look in details about applying and how to properly apply later on in this course. For now, just stick with me and keep this information in your mind. Then we move on, and once we exhaust this one, we go to the next one, then to the next one, and as we are getting through this, at some point we will start seeing here duplications or overlaps. Right now, that's a clear sign that we have scraped out most of what the market is currently looking for, and then we can transition towards crafting our about. Now, when it comes to crafting the about, here we can find things that are sort of getting together. For example, refactoring, maintaining and scalable app architectures, for example, agile environment. Also, we can group this into something like XP or extreme programming. That's a paradigm that does include all of these three, for example, in one conglomerate. Then we see clear communication, teamwork, collaboration. Those are soft skills that are adding up value. So like we can consolidate together into one point that we want to talk about, right? So you can put something like soft skills, maybe something like collaboration, teamwork, communication. We want to include those, and so on and so forth. We are going to try to group few things. We need 3 to 4 groups of things that are interesting and important, and we are going to come up with 3 to 4 sentences about us into our about page. Now again, it has to be a match. You do need to have these collaboration skills. You do need to have teamwork or communication skills. I'm not saying here that you should lie. Only if you have those, you're going to incorporate those. What I'm just saying here is that we have to tune our about towards what is required or what is needed. And this is again when we are crafting generic CV. And then once we have the generic one, we are going to make a copy per each job application. And then we are going to tune and tailor per job application what actually we are going to change in our CV. And that comes in the second week where we are actually going to apply to jobs. We are going to be scraping to a job. Okay, we are going to apply to this one. How do we apply to this one? Let's take a look what they need. Then we are going to tune a little bit our CV towards the needs, again, to make a match, and then apply. And then we are going to go throughout the details, like step by step in that course. For now, we are crafting here a generic CV. And that's how we are gonna craft our about. Now, let's go back to my CV, take a look into it, and see how I have applied this technique into my CV so you can see what I've done. And then when you are done with crafting your CV, you can make a comparison, right? Now, back to the job profile optimization course. At the end, we have this CV of mine here. So if you click on it, it opens my own CV. And let's walk through it and see actually how I have done. Here on top is my name and last name. Then I have added an email, which is my personal email, and my phone number. I've hidden here the number because this is shared within the community of 1K people. And I'm also sharing with other people. But if I am about to apply to a job, I'm going to, of course, reveal my phone number. And the idea is that the people can reach out to me. So adding locations, where you are, how old you are, whether you are married or not, it's completely relevant things here. So keep it nice and short, information that people find value at, that they can reach out to you. If you're married or not doesn't really matter, or if you have driving license or something like that. If it's required, they're gonna ask additionally. Next, on the right-hand side, I have my area of focus. It is Android development, Kotlin, Java. Again, this is outdated. I should update the CV as well. So here, I should replace this Java with something else. Again, I stand for Java. It's not that I don't know any longer Java, but it's less of my area of focus lately. But it could be nicer if I put Kotlin multi-platform, for example, or Jetpack Compose or something like that. Now, if you take a look at a summary, I have added a few sentences about who am I, what are my motivations, my goals, and what's my passion. What am I standing for, right? If I read through it, it says Android developer and software craftsman. So software craftsman comes from software craftsmanship, which is directly correlated with the extreme programming practices. Next, I say I have wide experience in mobile application development, passionate for clean code, test-driven development, XP, getting things done, professional behavior, and software craftsmanship. So this is a little bit repetitive, I should say. So again, this is something that I should update, and duplications like this are not adding much value, right? Next, it says, I love reading books, blogs, and collaborating with other people. Cool. So it says my nature of collaborating and sharing and working with people in general. Next, it says skills for designing and building solution from scratch to a final product, solving problems and organizing processes. So these are keywords and things that usually job offers have. So they do have somebody who knows how to organize processes, or somebody who has skills to build final products from scratch. So the entire process, somebody who can lead the entire process of building something from scratch to a final product, or solving problems and coming up with ideas, something like that. Next, it says excellent communication skills, Android user, open source fan contributor, love and passion for sharing knowledge, blogging and recording screencasts. Specialties, Java, Kotlin, Android, XP, open to challenges and discussions. So that's my about. It's not ideal, it's not perfect, but yours doesn't have to be perfect either. What is important is to match what the job market wants currently. And we just saw how to scrape out throughout what the job market wants currently, right? You just go to LinkedIn, go to the jobs tab, look into that, learn, understand what's the need, and then craft your summary here. 3 to 4 sentences, nothing more. Next comes the experience. As you can see, again, I'm not adding a lot here. I just added, for example, for the current one, leading the mobile app development. Before that, I was working on various third-party customer apps. And what was more important, so that was my responsibility, introducing technical practices across the company to improve the tech excellence. Then before that, I was chapter lead for Android at ABN AMRO, and I've been actively coaching chapter members. That was also my responsibility and a good achievement that I've done. So as you can see, I'm adding 1, 2, mostly 3 sentences. Like here, for example, I have working on a collect Android client of WeTransfer, leading Kotlin section of the WeTransfer Academy, and organizing coding katas, blah, blah, things like that. So I'm not adding too much. I've added few sentences that are sort of telling my nature, expressing what I've done, what was my responsibility, achievement, or both, and I kept it curious. So when somebody reads this, they want to understand how did I approach leading the Kotlin section of WeTransfer Academy, or how did I approach mentoring chapter members. So they would invite me on an interview to ask about these questions, right? And then it's my job to shine on the technical interview or these interviews where there will be screening to see whether I'm a match for the job position where I'm applying to, right? So keep it short and nice. Then comes the links. So here, as you can see, I have my LinkedIn, my GitHub, and my YouTube, because my YouTube has content that is relevant for Android development. I am adding it here. Then my GitHub, where I have open source contributions and projects that I've created myself that are sort of things that I'm learning currently relevant for the market, and my LinkedIn, of course. Then I've included here, as you can see, this is an optional section. Not everybody has a community. I run a community, I have it here. Again, not mandatory for everybody, it's something optional. Then I have publications, the last 5 apps where I have contributions, and this is again not up to date, as you can see, because the application that I'm currently working on is not listed here. So probably I'll put that one and remove one of these, or just maybe keep 3 to make it even shorter. And finally, I have education here. So this is available on your disposal here inside the community. You can take a look into it, and then you can craft your CV. And once you are done, you can compare it and see what you have. Once you are done with this, when you create your CV, you can actually test it against ATS. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, ATS stands for Application Tracking System, and many companies and recruiters are using this to track and to see whether a particular CV matches particular job offer or application, right? Below this video, I'm gonna list a bunch of ATS links where you can drop your CV or the outline of your CV, like copy paste all the content of the CV on one hand, then paste on the other hand the job offer that you are currently applying. And that's something that we are gonna do step by step in practice in the second week. But for now, I'm gonna put a list of free ATS systems that you can use to do these basic checks. And then what you can do is you can hit a button there and it's gonna tell you how much does your CV matches particular job offer. And if it hits above 50%, that's a good sign, because this is a generic CV. And if you would apply with a generic CV, if it matches 50% or up, that's a good sign. That is the moment when specific job offer tailoring of your CV comes into the game. Now we're gonna take specific job posts and we're gonna tailor a little bit the about, a little bit the experience with the things that are required for that job, and then we are gonna make a better match. Then if we run again against this ATS system, it's gonna go about 75-80%, which is more than ideal when applying for a job. Now, that's mostly everything about crafting a spotless CV. So use the templates, do the process about figuring out what the market wants, and make a spotless generic CV. Next, you can tailor it per specific job before applying when it comes to applications. And we are going to do that in the second week of this course together as well. Additional tip that you can do, once you craft your CV, you can also send it to me in a DM so I can give you initial feedback as well. So I'm gonna write you a short little feedback to tell you what are the things that I would maybe improve if I'm about to write your CV. So looking forward to see your CV and how does it look like. And I'm gonna catch you in the next video when we are gonna be optimizing your LinkedIn, making sure it stands out in front of others. Welcome to the fourth video of this week, which is focused on LinkedIn profile optimizations. And by the end of this video, we are gonna make sure our LinkedIn is spotless. It communicates effectively what the recruiters are expecting to see, and we'll make sure it stands out in front of the others. Now let's go back to our presentation and let's take a look into what we are going to cover in this video. First, we are going to look into optimizing our LinkedIn profile for the recruiters. Next, we are going to focus on showcasing Android skills and projects, how to list them effectively on LinkedIn. We're going to spend some time in building effective networking in LinkedIn. Next, we're going to see how we can leverage LinkedIn to find new and better job opportunities. And ultimately, we are going to see how we can build a personal brand by using LinkedIn. Now, before we start, a little warning. This is the most important video so far in the entire course. Make sure to watch the entire video, don't skip, don't fast forward. And as a little pro tip, what you can do is you can watch the video with double the speed to save yourself a little bit of time. Now, first off, optimizing your profile for recruiters. The key thing that you have to understand when it comes to LinkedIn is the LinkedIn SEO, or search engine optimization. Now, this search engine optimization on LinkedIn is based on keywords that you're having in your profile. So whatever you put in your profile, think in terms of keywords that are used by this search engine. Now, when recruiters are searching for people, the people that are matching better to what the recruiters are searching for, those people are appearing on top. So whenever you are optimizing your profile, think of this keyword. So the more keywords you're adding while thinking what the recruiters would potentially search for, that makes your profile appear on top in front of the others. Now, this is the single concept that you have to understand and internalize. And then whatever you do on LinkedIn is going to be more optimal based on this knowledge. The first thing when it comes to LinkedIn is the headline. We have to make sure it clearly highlights our core expertise. So we have to write a concise and impactful headline that highlights our core skills. We can put things like Android developer, Kotlin and Jetpack Compose enthusiast, things like that. And we want to avoid very generic terms and terminology here, right? So titles like software developer, they're sort of vague. It doesn't tell much. So if we are more niche towards what we are working on or what we are specializing at, that's gonna help us better. Next is the profile picture. That's also key, very important concept in LinkedIn. We want to use a professional photo with good lighting and friendly, approachable demeanor. So when you're about to create your profile picture, get close to the camera and look straight into it. And additionally, you want to use a solid background color instead of some random wall color or trees or whatever, and a color that takes attention. So try to choose some bright color. And we are going to take a look into examples later on. Next up, the about section. So you have to express your accomplishments, motivation, and goals into the about. This is one of the most important things on LinkedIn, which actually helps to optimize for the CEO that we have mentioned before. Here you can tell your story, you can explain your journey, key accomplishments, and what makes you passionate about Android development, for example. Now, in the about section, you may focus on the unique value proposition and why you are the candidate the recruiters want to hire. Next, the skills and endorsements. We want to add skills relevant to the job posting, and we are going to take a look how to do that effectively, right? So we're going to add skills relevant to Android, for example, MVVM, Jetpack Compose, material design, those kind of things. And as we mentioned before, recruiters are searching for specific keywords. They are searching for specific technologies that are needed for the job. And that's how we are going to match. And if you remember, we spoke that the skills don't have spot in our CV. But for LinkedIn, this is the key. On LinkedIn, we are going to make sure our skills are very optimized. And we are going to take a look in depth about this topic just in a bit. So the skills are essential on LinkedIn because that's what makes us more discoverable. Now let's do some hands-on experience and take a look into LinkedIn. So here is my LinkedIn profile, and let's walk through it. I have to understand that my LinkedIn profile is a little bit different than a usual LinkedIn profile because it is not optimized for finding Android developer job, but rather attracting people that need help with optimizing their job profile. So there is a little bit of difference, but here is the essence. So as you take a look here, there is this banner that is very important, and it tells more about what I do. In your case, this banner could be related to Android development. So for example, if you consider this text as a headline, something that we mentioned in the presentation, we can use the keywords of the headline also in our banner. But the banner is a must because it helps us improve the profile. And when somebody is looking at our profile, it looks much more professional with a nice banner compared to having no banner. So I would highly suggest adding a banner, and I'm gonna teach you how you can create a spot-on banner just in a bit. Next, when it comes to professional outlook, is the public profile URL. Most of the time, LinkedIn is gonna do something like linkedin.com/in/ some random ID or whatever. Make sure that you change this. You have the right to change this. You don't have to pay LinkedIn for this. And just edit and make sure it looks professional. Something like first name, last name. Now, when you do that, you go to canva.com. So this is a tool that you can also pay subscription to, but you can use the free version of Canva to create graphics. And this is the first thing that you have to do. So you create a profile on Canva. Creating a profile is free. You don't have to pay for this. And here you can search for LinkedIn. Now the key point here is that there are templates with the specific dimensions that are required. That's why Canva is cool. So now we are gonna choose LinkedIn background photo here. And basically we can choose from something that's already created. So if you find out something that might work for you, something that you like, you can choose, but you don't have to, because what's more important is the dimension. So you can find some free design and try to choose something bright. Now, when you take a look into all of these, the bright colors are naturally getting more attention. Our eye goes to the bright colors. So try to choose something bright here, yet elegant and nice. So don't go with something too complex or overdone. Choose something simple. And once you've chosen something, it's gonna allow you to edit this. So you can also change the color if you want. You can change fonts, anything. And then here you can drop some details. Literally your name, last name you can put, and here you can put the things that are your area of focus as we established, or the things that you may put in your headline. For example, if this is me doing it, I would do something like my name, last name, and here I would put something like Android dev. Then I can use pipe, or even better if you can use the bullet symbol. So if you go to Google, you go bullet symbol text, you can copy this and put it here. Then you can say Kotlin, again bullet, and then compose. Now you can expand this a little bit so that it matches the text. Like that. And now I think I don't need these letters here, so I can delete those. And keep in mind, on the left hand side, a good portion of this banner will take your profile picture. So keep your text or your branding on the right hand side. It's okay if you also put some contact information here, for example your email, although I wouldn't suggest because this is too public. Many people are going to be looking into it. So keep it nice and simple like that. Now as a comparison, you can see mine. It's just yellow color, and on the right hand side I have one text and I have a call to action. Then comes the profile picture. As I said, make sure that you're looking straight into the camera and your face is big enough. So make sure it is nice, professional photo, and use the same color that you are using for your banner so that it matches. And to choose the color, like if you click here on the banner and here it is the background color, you can use this button to allow you to pick a color. And by clicking on a color, it's gonna pick the exact same color that you are clicking on. Here I have some uploads. Let's take a look at a photo of mine. So if I take, for example, this photo, there is background remover on Canva, but this is the paid version. If you don't have the paid version, you will have to find a photo without a background. Or if you subscribe for Canva Premium, I think you can just give it a try with a trial, and while the trial you can do this editing, and then you can cancel the subscription if that's something that might work for you. I don't know. Now we are still in the banner, but it is worth to actually create new graphic for creating your profile picture. So either you can add a page here and move it, or you can go file, create new design, and then create this photo. Make sure that you are copying the same color. And then you are taking this photo and you are adding it on top of a background. And then when you are done with the designs, what you can do is you can export. So just click on the share button and then download. Make sure you have selected PNG and then download. And since I don't know this, I'm going to give you a suggestion. If you are not having the paid version, and if there is a limitation on the size, for example, to export high quality graphics, what you can do is if you take a screenshot of the exact same thing, for example, if this is the graphic that you need, you can just select that one and make a screenshot out of it, and then it's going to be high res. Cool. That's how you export and how you create the banner and also the profile photo. So make sure you're using the same background and you change those two. Then you add a highlight. So right here, keywords that potential recruiters might search for, but again, in the area of your focus, for example, Android development, Compose, Kotlin, those kind of things. Next comes, these are sections here that you may have, and they may vary from profile to profile. The About section is something that is very important, and we already spoke about. This is the third thing that you have to take care of. Now, in the About, you again think of the LinkedIn CEO and what keywords you are going to add here. Write a little story. This is similar to what you have crafted for the CV in a previous video. So you can actually take that About that you have for the CV and literally paste it here. That's also something that might work, although I would suggest having a little bit of variety. Okay, that's your About, and those are the most important parts of your LinkedIn so far. What comes next, you can have different sections. I have services here you may not have. What is interesting is the featured ones where you can spotlight things. We're gonna take a look once again later on in the presentation of this section, but here you can spotlight things, like for example, a project that you are very proud of or some accomplishment that you have made, something like that. So you can list those things here. Then if you don't have some section, you can find the sections here on the top, add profile section. So here you can include sections that you might want to. For example, you can add projects where you can list things that you are proud of in your GitHub. So that's also something very interesting and important, and we're gonna take a look again later in the presentation. And then it's gonna appear here, your projects section. Next up is the experience. So the experience is very important, just as we have in our CV, reverse chronological order of what we've been doing in the past. Basically, we can copy whatever we have in the CV, literally reflect that here as well. So the experience is important part. We are gonna take a look again back in the presentation. As a section, it has to be spotless here as well. The education, and last but not least, the skills. The skills is also, as we established, a very important section, and it belongs to your LinkedIn. The skills that you are gonna add here are basically keywords. They're gonna be matching the terms that the recruiters are gonna search for. So this is the key when it comes to optimizing for the LinkedIn SEO. So make sure that the skills are added here nicely. And as we saw in the previous video, and we'll be seeing later on in the course, we can keep adding skills as we are scraping through potential job positions and job offers that we may see in the jobs tab, as well as when we are gonna be adding projects. So for example, if you don't have experience to add, you may have projects that you've been working on your GitHub as a portfolio. So let's take a look how you can add a project and then how you can add skills while adding the project, right? So for example, here I can add profile section. I can go to projects, and here it asks me to add some data about the project. So I can add project name and description, and here it allows me to add additional skills. Now, if that project was something related to Kotlin multi-platform, I can add the name and the description to the project, and I can add skills here. Kotlin multi-platform. Now, even though the skill is not listed, I can just click it. It's gonna add it as a skill. I can add some media. I can add when I started and whether I'm still working on that project. I can add contributors, and so on and so forth. And then once I'm happy with what I've added here, I can save it. And now, as a last suggestion, would be nice if you add a link here in the description. You can add a link to that project if it's hosted on GitHub, so that people can easily click and go to see what you've done and how you have approached the whole story there. Cool. Now that's how you are going to be optimizing your LinkedIn. These are the sections that are very important, and we're going to take a look in the sections again back in the presentation. But my idea here was to showcase on my profile what's where and how to add those things and what is important. Now you can open my profile, scroll through it, and find the different sections that I have, and maybe you can take a look into what's available that you have that you can also include on your profile. Additional profiles that are going to be suggested when you open somebody's profile. For example, you're opening mine. On the right hand side, you're going to see another profiles. Now, I wouldn't only recommend opening these profiles to take a look what they've done, but I would strongly suggest actually connecting with these people, so sending a connection request. We're going to take a look just in a bit why it is important, but networking on LinkedIn is a killer feature. One of the core things that you should do on LinkedIn is spend some time to add some networking. So open somebody's profile. On the right hand side, you will see suggestions. So you don't only follow them, but open the profile and send a connection request. And we're gonna take a look later on in this course how to do that effectively. Building a network of people that are in the same area of you is a killer feature. Now let's go back to the presentation and proceed with showcasing Android skills and projects. As we saw on LinkedIn, there is a way where we can showcase in different sections our skills and projects. Now let's take a look why this is important and how we can do that effectively, right? So first thing, the roles. So make sure it clearly highlights your Android expertise. The roles should be in reverse chronological order as they were happening. And then in there, make sure you highlight the responsibilities and the achievements or the accomplishments that you've made per particular role. Now, if you lack professional experience, if you haven't worked for companies, it brings us nicely to the second point, which is projects. What we can do is we can showcase personal or academic projects that are demonstrating your skills and abilities. So we are going to add links to GitHub repos, published apps, or even blog posts. Everything counts as a project. Any topic that is relatable and that adds value, we may include as a project. Keep in mind that listing projects is as efficient and effective as adding these roles in your LinkedIn profile. And again, as I mentioned during the demo, in the description of the project, make sure it is easy to find this project and provide clear description and context. So make it clear what this project stands for. And that's how we can make sure our project section inside LinkedIn stands out. So include all the projects, don't hesitate if they are incomplete, if they are not fully finished. If there is a link and there is value that adds to the topic, just include it. As I mentioned during the demo, there is this featured section inside LinkedIn. We are going to use this section to spotlight things that we are most proud of or things that are adding most value for a particular topic. In this case, it might be Android development or Compose multi-platform. You get the idea. Last but not least, the skills is additional section that helps us do a match for a particular job description. Now, we want to add relevant technical skills in this section. We have to think about the CEO all the time. What are the keywords that are going to be used in our skills compared to what the recruiters are searching for? And we want to add skills that match the job descriptions where we are potentially applying. And now, if you remember from the previous video where we were crafting the CV, I demonstrated how we can easily add skills when we are scraping throughout the job offers that we may already have, but we haven't applied yet in our LinkedIn. Cool. Moving on, let's take a look into building a network that works. First of all, connect with purpose. Start off by connecting with recruiters, developers, and tech leads in Android, but not only Android, also in common or related industries like iOS, web, no limitations there. Make sure that you are personalizing the connection requests by mentioning common interest or why you want to connect. As we saw in the demo, on the right hand side, when you open particular profile, there are suggestions that you may connect. Now, do not only follow, but send a connection request, and oftentimes it's going to ask you to send a personalized message. Why do you want to connect? Now add some common interest, or at least you can say, I want to get in touch because I see you as somebody I can learn from. And that's going to help you to get accepted. Keep in mind that LinkedIn is a social network for professionals. So people don't have as much ego as on X, for example. So they're going to accept your connection request. Now, once you start getting more and more connections, you must start following companies, tech influencers, and hashtags like Android development or Jetpack Compose, for example. And you are going to start engaging by liking, commenting, and sharing insights on relevant posts to stay visible and to build more relationship. Now, as a pro tip, try to always add value. So when you want to engage with a post or a comment, you can also comment on comments. Try to add value. So position yourself as somebody who is coming from their own experience. So don't say you should do this, but rather say something like, this is what I've experienced, or this is my experience with ABC, or my approach to this is this and that, and the benefits I see are these. So by adding more value or adding value on a common topic, so for example, there is a post, you want to engage by adding comments. When you're adding comment, think about adding a value. Expand on the topic or add additional tips, tricks, or something that comes to your mind. When you're adding more value, people will start seeing you as somebody relevant. And that's exactly where you want to go. On the flip side, by staying engaged with your content, you are teaching the algorithm that you are alive, that you are there, that you are somewhere nearby. And then the algorithm is actually ranking people by being active or not active. So then when the recruiters are searching, the more active people are appearing in front in the result. And that's just the nature of how the algorithm works. Lastly, when it comes to building a network, what you want to do is look for LinkedIn groups focused on Android development or tech hiring. If the Android development is the niche that you're optimizing for, then join those groups. If it's different, find groups for that niche. And now once you join these groups, participate in discussions, and that's gonna allow you to establish yourself as a knowledgeable and engaged developer. All right, moving on, let's take a look into leveraging LinkedIn for job opportunities. So first of all, we can leverage LinkedIn as a tool for searching jobs. One of the killer features of LinkedIn is that we can use specific filters, and on top of that, we can set alerts for new job posts. We can use the LinkedIn job board to filter Android developer roles by location, experience, and remote options. And we can set up job alerts for new listings to reach out to hiring managers effectively. So the sooner we reach out, the better. Additionally, when it comes to job searching, we can use keywords. So by searching for specific terms like Android developer, Kotlin developer, or specific tools like Jetpack Compose, we can find specific jobs for specific niches that we are curious about. Last but not least, you can use LinkedIn to study companies you are applying to. You can follow them and check who works there. And then we can tailor our application by mentioning shared connections, projects, or company values. So LinkedIn is very, very powerful in that sense. All right, moving on, building personal brand through LinkedIn. Now, when it comes to building a personal brand, what is important is to post consistently. By doing so, we keep the algorithm aware of our existence. And if we are building a brand for a particular niche, for example, Android development, we are going to share posts about our journey as Android developer. So we can write about challenges, solutions, lessons learned, while working on particular projects, some things that we faced or challenged on daily basis. Just post, make a little post every now and then. Additionally, we can celebrate milestones. We can share accomplishments like certifications, maybe new projects that we've started or finished, maybe even app launches that we have done recently. Those are things that are adding up when it comes to sharing and building personal brand on LinkedIn. And here I will come back to the engagement. We spoke about adding comments on already existing posts from our network, but we can also create engagement by sharing our own insights, articles, tips and tricks, or anything like that. So we can make our own posts and add value that way. Again, the key is to add value. When we are making a post just for the sake of making a post, it's less than ideal. But when we are making a post where we're adding lots of value, that's where the magic happens. Which actually brings us nicely to building credibility, right? So the more you share valuable content, so pay attention to the value here, the more people will see you as a dedicated professional. And that increases your visibility in front of recruiters significantly. And this is a never-ending loop game. Add value, people is gonna start recognizing you, and that's gonna bring you in front of the recruiters more effectively. Finally, let's wrap this up with a little summary. Use LinkedIn to showcase yourself and your expertise effectively. LinkedIn is the best way to do it so as of this moment. Additionally, use it to build effective networking and your personal brand. And that's gonna help you to find job opportunities much easily at any point of time that you want. Now, it doesn't have to take too much. If you can spend half an hour to an hour a day on LinkedIn, that's gonna be more than enough to accomplish all these things that we have learned so far. Now let's get back to work, put all these learnings into practice, and let's make your LinkedIn profile skyrocket. Welcome to the fourth video of the job profile optimization course, where we are going to be looking into the importance of GitHub and how we can get the maximum out of it. Now back to our presentation. This is what we are going to cover in this video. First, we are going to take a look into crafting a professional GitHub profile, how we can do that effectively. Next, we are going to take a look into showcasing relevant Android projects, highlighting clean code and best practices, contributing to open source projects, and finally, we are going to take a look into making your GitHub recruiter friendly. As always, a little warning before we get started. This is the most important video of the course as of now, and in that sense, it is highly encouraged to watch the entire video. So don't skip, don't fast forward, and as a pro tip, you can watch the video with double the speed to save yourself a little bit of time. Now, Crafting a professional GitHub profile. The key question that comes to optimizing your GitHub profile is why people are looking into our GitHub profile and what they want to see, what they're looking for when they check our GitHub. Essentially, they are looking for the relevance and the ways we are approaching the things. They want to see our coding style, problem-solving approaches, and active contributions. And therefore, the frame around which we are going to optimize our GitHub is going to focus on these things primarily. Now, the first thing that we are going to take a look is the profile picture and the bio. So we want to use a clean and professional profile picture. Avoid pictures of cats or memes or anime or those kind of things. Make sure it is professional and it shows who you are. And also, write a bio that highlights your skills, your interests, and your goals. Think about professionalism and how to appear more professional when you're doing these things. Next up, pinned repositories. We can use this feature of GitHub where we can pin our best and most relevant projects, or the project that we are most proud of. For example, if we consider that a clean architecture is relevant nowadays, we are going to pin a project that showcases our approach to clean architecture. Or, for example, a repository that showcases our approach to learning compose animations. Such repository will show that actually we are up to date with the trends and we are active learner. Another idea would be a repo with some unique features that are solving a real world problem. One of the most important things when it comes to outlining projects on GitHub, especially the projects that are pinned, is writing clear descriptions for these repositories. So we want to make sure that we have a standing out README that tells exactly what this project is for, what does it include, what are the tools that are being used, the frameworks. So leverage the README file, which is a markdown file, and GitHub itself has a nice preview for markdown, so you can actually do magic when showcasing and outlining the project details there. And we're going to take a look in details how to do that just in a bit. Make sure you add links to your LinkedIn profile. Maybe if you have separate portfolio from published apps, for example, if GitHub is not your primary way to showcase your portfolio, if you have additional website, you can include it there. If you want, you can also include email or other contact information, and so on and so forth. And finally, one of the best ways to make your GitHub profile stand out is to introduce a profile README. Now, having a profile README is not mandatory, but it is very recommended and nice to have thing. Now, let's have a little demo and see how we can actually do these things. Here we are to my GitHub profile, and as we've seen so far, I made sure that my profile picture really stands out. So it clearly shows who I am, it shows my face, and it doesn't have any distractions, fancy background or whatever. It just have a solid color. And in fact, I use the same profile picture that I have in my LinkedIn and other social media, so that I am reducing the confusion when people are looking into different places that it is the same person. Next up, the bio. So here I have outlined mostly what I'm standing for, what are my core skills, what are my motivations, and what I'm passionate about. And finally, I do have some contact information below. So here we can find link to the school community, we can find a link to my LinkedIn and my YouTube channel as well. Now, if I go ahead and edit this, it's super easy to actually fill out. You want to keep your bio nice, short, and concise. If you want, you can include the name of the company where you're currently working at, as well as an email that people can reach out to you. And then you can include some links to your social media or portfolio or things like that. Now, these are the mandatory things that you have to do. And next, let's take a look at these optional things that we've mentioned so far. So here, first is the pinned posts. Now, if you don't have pinned posts, when you open your profile, this link here is gonna show different text like set up your pins or something like that. And when you click, you can basically choose which repositories do you want to be pinned. And here you can also list gists that you have. So it is not only about repositories, but you can also show gists. And in fact, you can also select repositories where you've made open source contributions that may stand out. And finally, the profile README. Now, as you can see here, I have a very basic profile README, and I'm gonna show you how you can customize this for you. But first, let's take a look how you can enable this. So this is an optional thing, and to do so, you have to create a new repository that has a name that is the same as your account handle. As we can see here, my account handle here on top is my last name, or if I click on my profile, I can see it here as well. Now, if you take this and then go and create a new repository, then here, as an owner, you have to make sure that you select your own handle and then paste. So this has to be the same as your handle. Now here it says that I already have it, that's why I couldn't create. but if you haven't done so far, you have to do it. Then you can put a little description, which is optional, and you have to make sure that this is a public repository. And ultimately, make sure that you have ticked this add a README file. And when you create this repository, it's gonna directly open the README file where you can customize your profile. This is how it is going to look like. So it's gonna allow you to edit. Now, when it comes to editing our README MD file, we can use both MD, which is Markdown language, or HTML. So both are working just fine. And what's great about this is that here we can click on a preview and see how does it look like. Now, as I said, mine is pretty basic, but here is a repository that you can take a look. So kudos first to this developer. And here you can find a repository, which is this awesome GitHub profile README templates. This is a repository full of templates that you can use that will make your profile stand out. So if you go here to the templates, you can actually see one by one all of them. By clicking here on the left side, you can see how does it look like. So just go ahead and see what do you like. And then if you go here to the code, you can copy paste and then of course update this code with your information so that you make sure you are not showing something that's not yours. So when you're done with editing and you are happy with your profile README, you can just commit the changes and it's gonna save. And then when somebody opens your profile, they're gonna see this nice section on top and they will find out more about you. What you have to keep in mind when it comes to crafting these things is about making it easy for people to find out information that they are looking for. And so by including information and links here, as well as pinned posts, you're going to make it easier for them to navigate and find what they are looking for. All right, now let's go back to the presentation and move on. Showcasing relevant Android projects. First comes the diversity. You want to include different types of projects in your GitHub. So you want to show a small project demonstrating mastering Jetpack Compose, for example. Then you may have another repository where you have a feature-rich application that uses popular libraries like Retrofit, Room, Coin, so something that is relevant for the current trends and technologies, right? Then you can have a repository where you have a clone of one of the popular applications like Instagram or YouTube. So make sure that you have varieties of different repositories in your GitHub profile, because that's something that helps for somebody who is looking at your profile to see and understand who you are, what are your approaches, and what kind of learner you are. Next up, quality over quantity. A few polished repositories are more impactful than many incomplete or messy ones. So don't aim to have tons of repositories. Rather, make sure the repositories that you already have are spotless, that they have clean README, nicely done, and the content inside them is well done and relevant. Which brings us to the next point, the README files. Put effort and write professional and detailed README files, right? So make sure that in the README you have included the project description and what are the key features of the application or the repository, what tools and technologies you are using, what's the architectural approach that you are taking. Then also make sure that you have instructions for running the project locally. You see, at the end of the day, it's about the effort. The more effort you put, the better, because it really shows how much do you care. And when somebody is looking in your profile, they'll associate the work that you've done here with the work that you will potentially doing if they hire you. All right, highlighting clean code and best practices. The first point here is the code. Write clean, understandable, and maintainable code. Clean code is pretty much subjective and has different meaning to different people. But there are a few things that you can focus on in this regard to make sure your code is in a state that is easy to read, easy to understand, and to maintain. These are a few practical tips that you can focus on. First off is the naming. Apply clear naming, so avoid vague names, abbreviations, or code comments that are explaining what something is. When a code comment explains why something is done this way, then the comment makes sense. But if the comment is there to explain what the code does or what something is, that's a clean sign that you can do better job at naming the things so that you can remove the comment. On top of that, prefer small, compact, and concise constructs. Small functions, small classes, small modules. If you have a class that is giant, you can try to split it into a few smaller classes. If you end up with a function that is too big, you can split it into few smaller functions, and so on and so forth. So smaller, more compact code that focuses on a smaller problem or a single problem is usually what brings your code to a state that is easier to understand and easier to maintain. Next up, practices. Include architectural patterns and official coding guidelines. In terms of Android, for example, make sure these repositories that you are showcasing are including up-to-date architectural patterns like MVVM, for example, and make sure that the code inside is aligned with the official coding guidelines that are coming from Google and from JetBrains. Next up, version control. Show proper usage of branches and tags and write meaningful commit messages. So use the branches to show different approaches. For example, if you're learning something, you can take approach 1 in one branch, approach 2 in second branch, and then have these branches in your repository. So when somebody's checking this, they will find out that actually you are having some diversity in terms of learning, and that you are aware of different approaches, so you know the pros and cons of each of them. Then you can leverage the tags to mark specific releases. That's also important when it comes to using the version control. And finally, you want to pay attention to the commit messages. So you want to avoid vague names like updated file, right? Instead, you should do something like fixed API response parsing in retrofit integration. Moving on, contribution to open source projects. This is very important because contributions to open source help you a lot to stand out. And when it comes to the contributions themselves, you want to stay consistent. Make regular contributions to your repositories to show that you are active and constantly learning and improving. Any public repository, regardless if it's yours or not, is considered open source. So active contributions, at least to yours repository, is something that brings you up. You want to avoid only periodical contributions before you are actually looking for a job. Rather, try to be more consistent. You can create pet projects that you can utilize for learning, and that's gonna help you make more consistent contributions. Now, on top of your own repositories, you wanna do open source contributions to other repositories too. In terms of Android, you can find Android-related projects on GitHub and contribute by fixing bugs, improving documentation, or adding new features. Now, what's important here is to stay on topic. If your area of focus is Android, stay around Android. And additionally, a mistake that many people do is they overdo documentation. Now, it's very easy to find typos or other mistakes in documentation, and those are easy wins. But when people are checking your contributions, you don't want them to see lots of documentation updates only. You want to make sure you have more meaningful contributions. And finally, stars and forks. You want to leverage popular repos to show your interest in staying up to date with the community. The stars in GitHub are considered as likes in other social media. So when you have meaningful repository where you showcase learning that other people can also leverage from, you're going to get more stars. And when you're contributing to a repository that you like, make sure you also put a star. That helps somebody else, right? In regards to the forks, there are two ways you can contribute to open source. You can directly clone a repository, do contributions in a branch, and then make a pull request. And that's less than ideal approach, right? That's considered a little bit rude. A more polite and a better approach is to fork a repository, which essentially makes a copy of the repository on your profile, and then you can make pull requests and contributions through your fork. I'm gonna link additional posts below this video where you will find a step-by-step guide about proper contributions to open source by leveraging forks, making your GitHub recruiter friendly. The first point here is the relevance. Pin projects and organize repositories that align with the job description you are targeting. So when somebody is checking your profile, think about the ease for them to find what they are looking for. Something that we mentioned at the beginning of this video. So make sure you are including relevant links and pin the repositories that are more relevant with the current trends and technologies. Another point in this regard is the activity overview. So you want to maintain a consistent activity graph to demonstrate your passion and dedication to coding. Something that aligns with the consistency that we spoke about before. Try to make consistent contributions so that the activity overview is gonna take care of itself out of the box. Additionally, when it comes to the activity overview, you can leverage the profile README and you can include a nice widget that's gonna show your activities and contributions. Last but not least, impact. Highlight projects that solve real-world problems or have been deployed to Google Play. If possible, include stats like downloads or stars on Google Play or performance improvements. When you can deliver on the impact effectively, you are gonna make whoever is looking at your profile very happy. Alright, let's sum the things up. When it comes to GitHub, we want to demonstrate professionalism there. It is the place where we can show what they will experience by working with us. It shows who we are and what are the approaches we take on a professional plan. Next, you want to show curiosity. Outline your ability and willing to learn and stay up to date. Make sure to include content that shows your curiosity and ability to learn new things and stay up to date with relevant technology. And finally, put the effort. Attention to details is key. Stay clean and organized because your GitHub is a reflection of you, and if you are clean and organized on GitHub, you'll be associated as someone who is clean and organized at work as well. If your GitHub is a mess, probably you're going to be associated as somebody who's going to do a lot of mess if they end up hiring you. So keep that in mind. Now, let's get back to work, put these learnings into perspective, and make sure your GitHub stands out. Welcome to the sixth video of the first week of the Job Profile Optimization course. And in this video, you will learn how to market yourself without experience. So far, you've learned about the different ways of communication when promoting yourself. We looked into CV, LinkedIn, and GitHub. In this video, you'll learn how to position yourself in all of these when you don't have a lot of experience. Now, I have to admit, it is more challenging to break into the field without formal experience, but it is absolutely possible with the right approach. And we are going to learn how to do it right now. Here is what we are going to cover in this video. How to leverage personal and academic projects. Then we'll see how to build an online presence and a personal brand, followed by how to leverage open source contributions. We'll see how to build a portfolio effectively. And finally, we'll see how to utilize networking and how to get opportunities out from it. As always, a little warning, this is a very important video, especially if you don't have a lot of experience. So watch the entire video, don't skip, don't fast forward. And as a little pro tip, if you want to save a little bit of time for yourself, you can watch the video with twice the speed. All right, leverage personal and academic projects. The key point here is the positioning, and these projects are going to help you position yourself as a learner. So you want to frame your beginner status as an advantage, because in that moment you are more adaptable, more eager to learn, and so on and so forth. And that's your advantage, right? So you want to position yourself as a learner, and these projects are essential when you're in that situation. So you want to highlight your commitment through ongoing learning that you are getting out from these projects. So showcase real projects. We have the three main forms of communication, which is CV, LinkedIn, and GitHub. And we want to highlight any apps or projects that you've worked on, whether personal, academic, or freelance. And showcasing these real projects is helping a lot in order to demonstrate your skills. Next up, explain the value. Clearly describe what the app does, what problem does it solve, what are the technologies used to build it, and so on and so forth. Now, even if you don't have real company experience, this helps you to mimic a professional work. And last but not least, focus on quality. A polished project with a great README and clean code can be as impactful as a professional experience one may have. Next up, build a personal brand. The first point when it comes to building a personal brand is the social media presence. Share your learning journey on social platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, anything you want. You can post about the things you learned or the challenges you overcome while building a project or learning a new library. Next up, blog or write articles. Share tutorials, problem-solving guides, or insights on platforms like Medium, Hashnote, or Dev2. An example article would be how I built my first Android application using Jetpack Compose. If you want, you can create your own personal blog, but these platforms already serve as such, so you don't have to go through that hassle. Now, once you create these materials, you can promote to weekly newsletters like Android Weekly or Kotlin Weekly if you're in the world of Android development. And ultimately, engage with the community. Comment on related posts, participate in discussions, and answer questions on forums like Stack Overflow, Reddit, and even communities like the Android Devs community, for example. Keep in mind the value you provide when doing so. Next up, contributions to open source. And when it comes to open source contributions, find relevant projects. So look for beginner-friendly open source projects on GitHub or platforms like Up4Grabs, for example. And once you find what you like, start with small contributions like fixing bugs or improving documentation to build confidence and trust at the beginning. Then you can work towards more complex contributions. And once you've completed these contributions successfully, GitHub is going to include them by default, but you also want to share them in the other communication forms, your LinkedIn and your CV. And when doing so, do not forget to add context. For example, fix the UI performance issue in an open source habit tracking application. And as we learned in the GitHub optimization video, you want to leverage the pinned repositories in GitHub to spotlight these contributions. Next up, build a portfolio that tells a story. Now, as you established, your GitHub may be already treated as a portfolio, so having additional portfolio is an optional but a nice to have one. So if you're considering to build a portfolio website, you can create a simple portfolio that showcases your skills, projects, and contact information. And for this, you can use platforms like GitHub Pages, Wix, or even WordPress. Now, the most important thing when building additional portfolio is to highlight the core skills. Emphasize technologies and libraries you've mastered. For example, Kotlin, Jetpack Compose, Firebase, Hilt, Coin, you name it. Last but not least, create case studies. For each project, write a short case study explaining the problem you aim to solve, your technical approach from researching to implementation, and the impact or the learnings from the project. Tap into networking opportunities. One of the best things you can do as a beginner is to ask for informational interviews. Now, you want to reach out to professionals in the field to learn from their experience. So you want to position yourself as asking for advice, not for a job. One of the mistakes I've seen many beginners do is when they reach out and directly ask for a job. Now, instead, if you ask for an advice, you're in a much better spot because you're positioning yourself as somebody who is curious, who is willing to learn and improve themselves. The things you will get and learn from this approach are mind-blowing. Next up, attend meetups and conferences. Participate in tech-focused events to meet potential mentors or collaborators. You may use platforms like Meetup, Eventbrite, Slack, or even School to join these relevant groups. Most of the time, these events are organized in person or remote, so you can join them regardless. Finally, leverage referrals. Connect with people in your network and express your interest in development rules. Now, this is important because even without direct experience, referrals can help you get noticed. Next up, the summary. First of all, you have to confront the beginning. We have to admit that every beginning is difficult, so you want to stay focused and don't give up. You have to understand that the initial push is hard. Once the ball starts rolling, it is a matter of keeping the momentum. Over time, it will compound with a snowball effect. And finally, you are not alone. It might feel lone and dark, and that's temporal. So seek help, leverage communities, including the Android devs community where you're part of, because these communities are behind you. All you gotta do is just get going. You got absolutely nothing to lose. The reality is, by not starting, you're gonna stay at the same position where you're already at. And if you start, in the worst case scenario, you are still gonna stay at the same position where you're at. So you got nothing to lose. But if the things turned out working, you are gonna be the winner. Now, let's get to work. Start by identifying one action you can take today, whether it is creating a blog post, contributing to open source, or polishing your GitHub profile. Let's do the work and share your progress inside the community. Welcome to the last video of the first week of the job profile optimization course. In this video, we are going to be looking into avoiding rookie mistakes when it comes to optimizing our job profile. Here we are in our presentation, and this is what we are going to cover in this video. Underestimating the importance of soft skills, followed by neglecting online presence. Then overloading your resume and GitHub, not practicing interviews properly, and ultimately failing to learn from feedback. As always, a little warning before we get started. This is the most important video of the course as of now. So watch the entire video, don't skip, don't fast forward. And as a little pro tip, you can watch the video with twice the speed to save yourself a little bit of time. Underestimating the importance of soft skills. The first point here is the communication. The communication is vital soft skill regardless if you are in tech or not. Focusing only on technical skills and neglecting communication can hurt you in interviews and team settings. When it comes to improving your communication, you may practice explaining technical concepts clearly and confidently. Next up, teamwork. Show that you can collaborate effectively, even if you don't have direct team experience. Mention any group projects or open source contributions that can showcase your teamwork spirit. Last but not least, proactivity. Employers value candidates that take initiative. So highlight instances where you went above and beyond in your personal or academic projects. Next up, neglecting online presence. The biggest mistake people make when it comes to online presence is incomplete profiles. Avoid leaving your LinkedIn, GitHub, or portfolio half-baked. Recruiters judge on the first impression, and incomplete profiles can look quite unprofessional. Another mistake is ignoring GitHub presentation by not cleaning messy or outdated repositories or repositories that are not having clean and concise README documentation that explains the project. Another mistake would be having a generic LinkedIn profile that has a vague headline or no profile summary at all. Another common LinkedIn mistake is not showcasing related projects in the featured section, so you don't want to miss out on that. Next mistake when it comes to online presence is inconsistent branding. You want to ensure that your resume, GitHub, and LinkedIn, they all tell the same story about your skills and interests as an Android developer, or whatever area of focus you are at. And last but not least, ignoring the networking. A very common mistake that people make is not engaging with related communities online or offline, which essentially limits the opportunities. So you want to be active on platforms like LinkedIn, GitHub, Reddit, Stack Overflow, and even School now, and you want to attend local or virtual events. And when it comes to local events, You can leverage platforms like Meetup or Eventbrite to find groups around the area where you are at that are organizing in-person meetings and events. Next up, overloading your resume and GitHub. The first common mistake in this area is too much information. You don't want to list every project or technology you've ever touched. You want to focus on relevant ones that are showcasing your skills in the area of focus, for example, Android. And keep in mind to eliminate any information that doesn't add value, for example, your age or whether you are married or not. Next up, poorly documented code. Avoid uploading messy or undocumented projects on GitHub or projects that are having way too much documentation that doesn't add any value. You want to make sure your repositories on GitHub include README files that are explaining the projects and provide clear instructions on how to work with them. Another mistake in this area is generic CVs. A key step in the process is identifying what specific companies that you are applying to are looking for in developers. Tailor your resume to each job application by highlighting your abilities and projects that align with the job description. Next up, not practicing interviews properly. The first mistake people do in this area is technical overconfidence. Oftentimes, people think that knowing Android basics is enough. However, employers often ask about threading, caching, security, testing, and even data structures and algorithms, and even problem solving too. So you want to make sure that you ace all of these areas. Another common one is skipping mock interviews. Failing to simulate real interview scenarios can lead to panic during the interviews themselves. You may leverage free online platforms where you can practice mocking interviews. You would meet people with common interest on these platforms and you are gonna interview each other in order to practice and build more confidence. And as a matter of fact, inside Android Dev Pro community, you are gonna get mock interviews out of the box. Last but not least in this area is ignoring behavioral questions. Make sure that you prepare for behavioral interview questions that test soft skills like teamwork, conflict resolution, and adaptability. Next up, failing to learn from feedback. Unfortunately, the most common form of feedback is a rejection, so you want to treat rejections as learning opportunities. Reflect on what might have gone wrong and improve for the next time. And since this isn't always easy to do, you may ask for additional feedback. Which brings us to the second point, which is not seeking feedback. So ask for feedback from mentors, from peers, and also from the interviews themselves when possible. In this area, follow-ups are golden. As a pro tip, show gratitude for the opportunity, and that would increase the likelihood for you to get feedback. And ultimately, a mistake that you definitely don't want to make is overlooking patterns. If you keep receiving similar feedback, focus on addressing those specific gaps. If communication is a weak spot, practice communication in both written and spoken form. If coding challenges are a weak spot, dedicate time to practice them. Alright, let's sum this up. First of all, mistakes are inevitable. Everyone makes mistakes, especially early in their career. And that's okay. There won't be any learnings otherwise. But avoiding these common pitfalls that we saw so far are definitely gonna help out to speed up the process. Now, take massive action, identify one or two mistakes you've been making, and take immediate steps to correct them. And finally, if you haven't, join the Android Devs Pro group so that you get much better help and support in this regard. Now, let's get to work, let's put these learnings into consideration and apply what's applicable. And next, I'll invite you to proceed to the second week where you'll be learning about handling the hiring process effectively and getting the most out of it. See you there.